everybody doing this morning? Good. For this week's Meet Your Otero, we have Joseph Eubank. Joseph works for the TRIO Student Support Services Program here at Otero College. He's an advisor, success coach, and professional tutor. But he likes to say that he just helps students with everything college related. He does everything from advising, tutoring, to help with transferring, personal coaching, and event planning while he's here at work. So he stays pretty busy all day long. Outside of work, he likes to find little adventures all across Colorado with his partner, Mackenzie. With such hobbies as hiking, driving, playing D&D, reading or watching fantasy stories, checking out cool coffee shops, learning new songs on the guitar, and so much more. Everyone, please help me welcome my friend, Joseph Eubank.
We're going to try and multitask today because I have this cool little race car mouse that's going to be my clicker, so we'll see how effective that is. Can you guys hear me okay? Tim, is that working well? Cool. We're going to switch hands. I'm actually a little nervous. I was all excited and like, oh man, I feel ready, and then I see, empty space in front of me and people out in the crowd. It feels like I'm back on stage like at Picket Wire, so that's cool. So I'm just going to dive in. You guys can probably see the title of this slide. We will come back to this idea throughout the presentation today. So I'm going to kind of, hopefully, throughout the shape of this presentation, kind of build you guys up to this end goal. What does this idea mean? The time that is given me. And what does that relate to finding my center, right? And we'll talk about that. We'll go into that. So let's just dive into it. Ooh. So a little bit of context. I spent a lot of time brainstorming this and not very much time making it because that's how my brain works. I will think about something for weeks and weeks and weeks and then not actually do anything until maybe a day or two before because I'm a procrastinator, right? I think maybe some of us can relate with that idea. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, well, I don't want to just yap at you guys all day long because that's not fun, right? It is sometimes kind of interesting to listen to someone tell you about their life, right? And sometimes you start to zone out. It's like, okay, your favorite color is blue, and you like llamas, and you went to Peru one time, and blah, 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 blah. There will be a little bit of that, but I kind of want to give you guys a little bit more of a holistic view of what makes me tick. So, through that process, how am I going to do that? So I'm going to start by posing a powerful idea, and I really want to emphasize this point. I will start every little section of this presentation by saying something or relating something that really matters to me, right? Whether it's through experiences I've had or moments throughout my life or something similar to that. A powerful idea that has really stuck with me, and we'll call that the what, right? What are we talking about today? We are talking about these kind of ideas or concepts that I find really impactful personally, and hopefully you guys can relate to those things too. And then this is a presentation about me. So we have to include a little bit of the who, right? Who are we talking about today? We're talking about Joseph, unfortunately. I don't love talking about myself, so we're going to try and squeeze that in somehow, right? That's kind of important. And then really the meat of the matter. For every little section of this presentation, we're going to talk about that idea of finding my center, or the why and how we're doing this today. Why this matters to me, why this idea has such an impact in my life, right? So let's disclaim some things, and let's define some things before we talk about what we're going to talk about today. So number one, I am not a professionally licensed counselor or mental health therapist. So if I mention something today, this is me, right? This is Joseph. Maybe this is impactful and helpful insight for you. Maybe it's not, because everyone's different, right? I am actually wrong about stuff all the time, right? So this is my lived experience. Everybody has their own unique lived experience, right? So as we dive into this stuff, right, maybe you'll have a tidbit or a nugget of wisdom you like, but maybe your life is different, right? So keep that in mind. I am not a therapist. I am not a mental health counselor. But we have an awesome mental health counselor on campus. So in the title of my presentation, I threw out this idea about the quote-unquote age of information and finding my center within it, right? So let's take a second to define What the heck do I even mean by the age of information? And maybe you guys have heard this. Maybe you've taken a psychology class, sociology class. Maybe you really like anthropology. But what does this idea mean to Joseph? So people will throw out the idea. Has anyone, show of hands, anyone heard of the Anthropocene? Nobody? Tim's heard of it. Dope. Cool. There is this idea that we live in what's called the Anthropocene. Humans, society, people. The Anthropocene is kind of a catch-all term to describe how the planet we live on is impacted by the existence of people. So geologists will say this isn't a thing. Geologists will say we've only lived on this planet for, several 100,000 years as a distinct, impactful species, right? Sociologists and anthropologists will be like, this is what we study. This is what we do. Anthropology, the Anthropocene, is the study of people, right? And so I find a lot of value in that definition because I constantly am thinking about how this world that I live on and how me as a person am impacted by this massive global society, right? So what does age of information mean then? What am I saying with that? Have you guys ever opened your phone? Right? We are bombarded daily, constantly, 24/7 with information. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, right? Maybe you get a text from your friend saying, I hope you have a great day today. Maybe you get a text from your friend saying, I'm really struggling right now. Maybe you open Facebook or maybe you open TikTok and you see, oh my gosh, people are dying across the world, right? We are constantly interrupted by information throughout our lives, right? And we can use that, right? We'll talk about that. I'll kind of give you guys a little bit of insight into how I use that and how I kind of make my peace with that. But that's something to think about. So that's why I'm talking about age of information, right? That's kind of what that term means. We are all a bunch of people. We're always communicating, and it can be huge, and it can be overwhelming sometimes, right? So next I want to talk about the last really important definition that I've thrown into this, which is the idea of finding my center. And that's the point of my presentation today. I and my family kind of generally, I don't want to say suffer, but we have generalized anxiety. And this is kind of a idea and a concept that a lot of people will resonate with or connect with or have some knowledge of, right? I want to shout out my mom, Katie. She's not here. She lives in Florence, Colorado. She has, throughout the entirety of her life, dealt with and found strategies to cope with severe depressive anxiety. That is something that I didn't have a lot of context for when I was little, right? She's just my mom, right? Turn the volume up. Pause for a second. Is that too loud? Are we good? Thank you. Where was I? Yes, I want to shout out my mom. Katie. Like I said, she dealt with depressive anxiety for her whole life, essentially. And I have had the wonderful, wonderful benefit of being able to look at her as a role model through that. My sister has a diagnosed high-functioning anxiety disorder. All of my siblings have dealt with general GAD, GAD, general anxiety throughout our whole lives. But unlike some people and some circles and some families and some groups, I have a really good role model to look for, right? So I want to shout her out, just work her into this presentation. So what is finding my center? Well, if I'm really anxious all the time, how do I find my center, right? My center to Joseph means a place of peace, a place of calm, a place of feeling happy and confident and flow. If you guys ever take a positive psychology class, you'll learn about the idea of flow, right? So finding my center is finding a balance between my own anxieties, right? And then finding peace when my mind gets too busy or when my anxiety gets too loud, right? And then I want to reiterate this idea, the time that is given me, right? We'll come back to that. I'm kind of going a little slow right now. So at the beginning of this presentation, I brought up the idea that I'm going to tackle this presentation through kind of 3 different angles. I'm going to bring up an idea, something that's really powerful to me. I'm going to define it a little bit. I'm going to tell a story about it, and I'm going to say, why does it matter to me? Or maybe why it matters to you. So I'm going to talk about stories. Have you guys ever listened to a story? Yeah, you have. Have you guys ever read a story? Yeah, you have. Have you guys ever watched a movie, opened up TikTok and looked at opened up Facebook and looked at your stories? We use this term and we throw this term around in everyday life. I don't know if we think about it often enough. I'm going to butcher this quote. I wish I'd written it down. But it goes something along the lines of, "You are not truly forgotten until the last words are spoken about you." I think that's thrown around in a lot of different contexts. I think of it from the movie Coco. If anyone's ever seen Coco, that's a really good movie, by the way. I truly believe in that concept. So when I talk about stories, I'm not just saying the books that you read when you were 5 years old or your parents read to you. I am talking about people. We make stories, and we are stories. If you ever watch the movie Coco, again, I would highly recommend because it really emphasizes this idea really, really well. We are stories. So let me tell a story real quick. Why are stories important to me, and how did I kind of come to this conclusion? I'm a nerd. Oh my gosh, can you guys tell? I really like nerdy stuff, and I really like stories. And so I would drive, or I didn't have a driving license at 10 years old. I would bike down to the Woodruff Memorial Library every day throughout the summer, and I would just read. And my parents probably should have paid attention to what I was reading in retrospect, but that taught me so much. Because it taught me about people. It taught me about how we communicate, about what makes us us. It taught me about the good and the bad in the world, right? Because there's both in equal measure. And so that's a little story. Every day throughout the summer, honestly, I wish I could still do it, but I work, unfortunately. But every day in the summer, I would bike down to the Woodruff Memorial Library and read. I would spend hours there. And then I do want to shout out kind of two things that really stick with me, that really continually to this day tell me how important stories are. Number one, I continue to indulge in fantasy stories and just stories in general, right? So I will watch The Lord of the Rings, little photo up there. I will play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, little photo down there at the bottom. That's my sister and her Dungeons and Dragons group. We went to the Renaissance Festival several years ago. I continue to do that to this day, right? You know, Dungeons and Dragons is a collaborative thing where I get to make stories with other people. Oh my gosh, that's so cool, right? When you think about it that way. Making stories with other people. Whoa. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Woo. Come on, race car. There we go. Okay, sorry. There we go. So when I was thinking about things that matter to me, this was a term that I struggled to define for a little while. But I kind of wanted to tie it into my love of stories. A powerful idea that has really resonated with me throughout my life is the idea, thanks Chris Stork, I don't think she's here, but the idea of a quest. What do I mean by a quest? So quest is the act of taking action one step at a time. This is not just something that the Fellowship of the Ring does when they climb up Mount Doom and throw the ring into the fires. That is a quest. For Joseph, a quest is sometimes getting out of bed, right? A quest is putting on my shoes. A quest is driving to the doctor's office, or a quest is listing out the things that I really want to do in my life that I don't have the time for sometimes. A quest to me is something that can be scary, but is motivating. Sometimes they are big and sometimes they're small, right? Just depends on what you're doing in a given day. But always are life-changing. So quest is something that I do that will have some sort of impact in my life, right? So maybe I'm just getting up out of bed and putting on my shoes for that given day. Or maybe I am, taking a drive to the mountains of Colorado. Maybe I am motivating myself to talk to someone who I have not really wanted to talk to for several months. Whatever that looks like, I'm going to call that a quest, because that's going to have an impact in my life. So I'll keep this one brief. Quests can sometimes mean adventures, whether they're good or bad. When I say adventure, they kind of relate. The ideas are similar. But an adventure, to me, kind of implies the aiming for a goal, getting there, and then being done. There are good things in adventures. If you guys have ever watched The Lord of the Rings, or How to Train Your Dragon, or Toy Story, they go on some sort of adventure, and good and bad things may happen. So I'm going to tell a little story about a green Jeep. You guys, Alexa and Bethany know about the green Jeep, and Aaliyah know about the green Jeep. This has been my adventuring companion for, 8 years? And I just now gave it up for hopefully the last time recently. Took it back to my dad. This thing was both good and bad. Because it was good that it allowed me to commute to college, right? And it was bad because sometimes it wouldn't let me commute to college, right? Sometimes the adventures and quests that we go on have a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. A little backstory, this thing likes to break down every 1 or 2 weeks, right? So it works when it works and it doesn't when it doesn't. And then I do want to talk about that top photo. So this is something that I know all of us in this room have felt at some point in time. It was universal. We experienced COVID, and we're alive today, right? We had this period of time 3-4 years ago that everything was just kind of weird. I don't want to sugarcoat the idea that we all had this kind of weird experience. But I do want to highlight that photo because that was probably when I was most depressed in my life period, right? I suffer from generalized anxiety. I don't want to say suffer, I have generalized anxiety, and sometimes that leads to depression, right? I put this here because that moment or that time was kind of coming out and coming into the light a little bit for me. That is Fountain Creek, where it intersects with the Arkansas River in Pueblo. And I was there doing a college assignment. And everything was wrong because I wasn't doing college and I was having to live at home and I didn't have a job and blah, 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 blah. I like to point out those kind of moments, and I kind of like to remember those kind of moments because they remind me I might not know my end goal on my adventure yet, or my journey, or my quest. Come on. Maybe. There we go. I'm going to kind of go a little bit more quickly now. This is another idea that has really resonated with me, and I'm going to define this real quick. Power of being kind or kindness, but not just being nice. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that idea. If that resonates with you, I'm not sure, but it really resonates with me. So, what is kindness to Joseph? Kindness is active listening versus anxiety-motivated people-pleasing. I have kind of really come to this conclusion through conversations and therapy and other things in my life that kind of tell me I'm never going to be kind to someone else. I'm never going to listen and be active and engaged with someone else unless I am kind to myself first. And so I draw this difference in my mind. Am I actually listening and engaging with that which is around me? Or am I people-pleasing? Because that's not helpful to anyone. That's not helpful to me. That's not helpful to the person that I'm trying to people-please. Because it is motivated by my anxiety, right? Something to chew on, something to think about. So I want to tell a little story. I am not very good at being kind to myself first and others second because I don't like myself very much sometimes. Does anyone else resonate with that? Maybe, right? So the story that relates to that is complicated and ever-changing, but it definitely has the most to do right now with my wife. So I'll shout out that top photo there of us being nerds at our wedding. That was fun. She is the definition of the kindest person that I have ever met, so much so that she reminds me that I need to be kind to myself before I am kind to her, because I cannot be kind to her unless I am kind to myself first. I've kind of talked about why it matters and how it helps me find my center or my peace, but I really want to reiterate this idea. Self-love begets self-worth. Self-worth begets empathy. Empathy begets kindness. Kindness begets self-love. Self-love begets self-worth, etc., etc. When I think about the idea of kindness, I really relate it into that kind of circle of thought, right? If I'm kind to myself, I'll be kind to others. If I'm kind to others, they'll be kind to me. If people are kind to me, that will build my self-worth, and it's a cycle, and you gotta start somewhere, right? You have to start with you, because you are the person that you have impact over, right? Self-worth, self-love. It's hard, I suck at it. I don't know, I feel like we all do. Oh golly, there we go. This is where I get a little bit more fun. And this is the hardest part for me to put together. But I believe that there's a lot of power, this is a powerful idea to me, in like the duality of something that is quiet and something that is loud, or the power of sound and silence. What the heck do I even mean by that? Well, let me talk about that. And I guess before I talk about that, I want you guys to chew on that for a second. And I'll give you guys, maybe close your eyes, maybe meditate for a second, maybe think for a second. What's a sound you like? Music, nature, leaves on the ground, honking cars, I don't know. Whatever it is to you, and feel it, think about it for a second. So I personally think of aspen trees. Those are my favorite sound in the world. I think about rainfall. Think about music, which I'll talk about a little bit. So sound wouldn't exist without silence. And this is going to sound oxymoronic or weird, but I think you need both. My favorite sounds would not exist without a little bit of silence to back them up. I love the sound of aspen trees because it's quiet everywhere else and I can just hear the aspen trees. And that's important to me. That is one of the most fundamental things that I kind of find my center in, because we're all physical. We're all people feeling, we all have bodies, so we need to check in with them sometimes. So I'll tell a really quick story. What are some of my favorite sounds? I love the band Half Alive. I was playing their music when we walked in today. I love Studio Ghibli movies, and that sounds weird, but they have silence. They're a Japanese animation studio that makes the most beautiful movies you've ever seen, and they intentionally build moments where there is nothing happening, and people are just sitting, and it's quiet. It's like a breath of fresh air. Oh my God, I love those movies. And I love the great outdoors, because that allows me to really engage with my senses, hear things, be still with things. And then I have, recently, this is something I'm discovering, is I have like pretty bad tinnitus. So it makes sense that I like sounds, because tinnitus is the ringing in your ears that is only present when things are quiet. Interesting. I've already talked a little bit about why they matter to me. How do they help me find my center? They create space for emotion. So sound and silence allow you to express emotion or feel emotion, right? So if I'm listening to music, I am pumped up. I'm having the time of my life. If I am walking in a nice little field of aspen trees, then I am quiet and I am listening and I'm having a very peaceful moment, right? This one was also really hard to put together, because I kept going back and forth on what do I mean by this. And so I landed on curiosity. Curiosity is the thing that keeps driving me every day. I'm exceptionally curious, and sometimes people get very annoyed by that. I don't know if anyone else ever related to that, but yeah. And so I define curiosity for me as equal parts skepticism. So skepticism is being critical and saying, I don't get why that's why that is. Why is that why that is? That thing you're telling me, I don't believe what you're telling me. Tell me about it. And a desire to learn. So it's that tell me about it part. So being curious is, that's interesting. I don't agree with that. Tell me about it so I can learn about it, right? Skepticism or curiosity, that drives me every day. So I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about that top photo. That is one of 3 photos that I was able to find of the Philippines. My dad was a part-time missionary every summer, and I went with him 7 summers in a row to the Philippine Islands in Southeast Asia. All of the photos are just like in the ether, but I was able to find one of them. I remember exactly where it is, but I do remember being 9 years old and going on an airplane for the first time and being like, I think I'm gonna die, because I'm scared of heights. I have worked on that over time, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that has meant for me. But I was also 9 years old and curious. This is new. This is a new place and a new people. This is an airplane where I'm going thousands of feet in the air, and I want to learn about that, and I'm curious. Screaming at heights, building makeshift dams. What do I mean by that? So the scientific process has always been really important to me, powered by that skepticism and curiosity. So I just mentioned that specifically. I remember going camping with my family, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, and spending hours playing in the river, building little dams to see how the river would change, right? And I think about that, and I remember that because it helps motivate me, right? I am curious, I want to learn, I don't want to be stuck in a rut. So why does curiosity matter, and how does it help me in that process of finding my center? Curiosity about people feeds an open heart and an open mind. That helps me break my social anxiety, right? I am not scared of you, I want to learn about you. That's a challenge. Curiosity about the world makes a better world, so that leads me to my scientific process. I don't just want to be internal and anxious all the time. I want to be engaged with that which is around me, right? Physical things, science, right? I love science. People, right? And then the most important aspect of curiosity to me is that it breaks my fear. I will not be afraid because I am curious. I want to learn, right? This is coming from someone who is anxious, right? I don't want to stand on a high horse and say that I'm good at this, but I use it to motivate myself. And that starts in the internal. So I talked about kindness. Curiosity starts with you, right? You have to have the intent to be curious. So this is the most important one. And I know I'm going a little bit long, but I hope that you guys, there we go, sorry. I hope that you guys will sit with me through this. And I changed up the format on this one a little bit, because I feel like it's so important to me. The thing that helps me cut through the noise and gives me a feeling of a center when I am extremely anxious is the power of gratitude. Everyone defines this differently. Everyone you ask will have a slightly different definition of gratitude, so I just threw on one that I found, and I'll read it out loud. Gratitude is the act of recognizing and acknowledging the good things that happen, resulting in a state of appreciation. I would ask you guys to think about what is gratitude to you, what is being thankful to you, right? Because this is what's being thankful to Joseph. Everyone defines it differently. For me, it cuts through the noise. If I'm thankful for something, I am not worrying about something. I'm not anxious. Being thankful says, or being full of gratitude says that I can, not that I cannot. So you guys might start to see, this is feeding back. This is feeding back to my curiosity. This is important. Maybe this is the fundamental Christian conservative background I came from talking. I don't know, but it feels important to me. Gratitude says that I am given life. I have not taken my life. No, I have not earned it, but I have been given it, right? I don't care what kind of religious philosophy you believe or whatever. That's what matters to me, right? I have this fundamental belief that I have been given my life, and I am so thankful for that. Gratitude, because of that, teaches me radical empathy. What does that mean? I suck at this, right? Because we're all different. But being thankful for my life makes me think, what if everybody else is also, the same thing? Gratitude says that I'm still learning. Feel like that? Yeah. Gratitude for me says that things are temporary, stuff and things, but people and experiences are forever. So I do not want to hold on to my things too hard, and I want to be able to let go. Anxiety makes that difficult. I'm going to let you guys fill in what that word means. Gratitude is effing difficult, isn't it? Oh, this thing doesn't want to work. There we go. So we'll kind of come back on track a little bit here. So what am I grateful for? This is like my little me part. This is the story part. I'm really grateful for my body and my senses, my touch, my sight, my hearing, my smell, my taste. And I talked about that a little bit when we talked about sound and silence, right? I am so thankful that I get to see things, because I know that's not a given. I am so thankful that I get to walk around, because I know that's not a given. I am so thankful that I get to smell and taste and hear, because I know that's not a given. I'm really thankful for this weird little planet we live on, right? As you guys have seen, I've themed my whole presentation around trees and stuff. I really appreciate that I get to see it, experience it, and interact with it. I'm really thankful for the people that have taught me these things and these skills on this weird little planet. I'm thankful for these parallel ideas of humor and grief, because they are coping mechanisms that let me see the world as I see it. And we talked about all of these things, but I want to reiterate them. I am really thankful for the stories and the quests and the sound and the silence and curiosity and kindness, because those are the framework that I interact with the world. If I'm happy, but I try to be. I'm thankful for my partner, duh, she's great. I'm thankful for my family. And then I'm really going to hit the nail on the head with this one. I'm grateful for time. That's hard. So I'm going to read you guys this quote. I wish it need not happened in my time. So do I, and so do all of those who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All that we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And if you guys have watched or read The Lord of the Rings, that's J.R.R. Tolkien in the Fellowship of the Ring talking to Frodo and Gandalf, rather. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. And this is my interpretation of that. Time is given, but it is not a given, right? I have tried to talk about a lot of positive things thus far, because I try to be that. But the title of this slide might key you into my feeling of this. It's kind of a duality. We lose things. People, sometimes ourselves, sometimes stuff. None of it is a given. The only thing that we have is the time. We just have time. We don't know how much of it we have, but we have it. So I'm going to enjoy it. Sorry to end on a little downer, but here's a nice photo of the San Juan Mountains that I got to visit last year, or this year actually. Yeah, questions? Comments, concerns?